Testing. That's weird.
Yeah. How is that? How's your water?
It's good. Do you want some?
Did you bring an extra water?
Well, I mean, I just have some more in here if you want some.
That's
I can
okay.
refill it.
No, I'll get some next
I
time.
like having a water because I always my throat is always getting dry when I'm talking for a long time.
I
Well,
can hear the vocal fry as your voice gets dry.
you can. I hope that's not too obvious.
No.
It's like I want to cough it, but then I don't want to be coughing, But yeah, when I teach silver sneakers, I'm chugging water the whole time.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do they all have their own water bottles?
Yeah, they all bring their own waters. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, shall we talk about chapter 2,
Yes.
titled Desire, the
Let's
starting
do it.
point of all achievement?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, so the first concept that I wanted to ask you what you think about is burning bridges. Now, Napoleon Hill talks about Barnes again, the guy that we talked about
Yeah.
in the last chapter. And he says, he did not say, I will keep my eyes open for another opportunity in case I fail to get what I want in the Edison organization. He said, and this is quoting Barnes, there is but one thing in this world that I am determined to have, and that is a business association with Thomas Edison. I will burn all bridges behind me and stake my entire future on my ability to get what I want. Unquote. He left himself no possible way of a retreat. He had to win or perish. And that ends my quoting of the book itself. So what do you think about that idea? Is it a good idea to burn bridges so that you don't, opt for a plan B or something?
That's an interesting question. I think to a certain extent, I think it's okay to put all of your energy into one goal, but I don't think it's a bad idea to leave other avenues open for success or for career choices, because maybe you start by wanting to go one direction, but then another opportunity pops up and you decide to go that direction instead. I don't know, I don't know about the idea about actively burning bridges so that you can't do other things in the future, but yeah, I don't know.
Do you have a plan B?
No. I don't even have a plan A.
Oh.
Well, but
Well, yeah, no, I can relate to this. When I was in art school, I had several teachers say, if you can do anything else, you should not choose art. You should go do
choose
that
something
thing.
else.
If you can be a lawyer, go be a lawyer. Or, if you can be a doctor or something. And I guess did I burn bridges? I don't think I really burned bridges. Well, I did once when I was really frustrated in college, and I dropped out. And the lady at the office, as I was dropping out of college, said, "Make sure that you check the box that says you're coming back." And maybe it was because I was reading this book, but I defiantly checked the other box that said I wasn't coming back.
So you permanently tried to burn that bridge.
I did, and then I went and studied with this artist on the East Coast, Patrick Devonis, for a while, and he actually convinced me to go back and finish my degree. So when I studied with him for a bit, I came back here and got back into college, and they let me back in, even though I checked the wrong box.
Wow.
And they even gave me my scholarship back.
That's amazing.
So, I don't know. Maybe you can burn bridges, and if people are nice, they'll let you rebuild the
Yeah.
bridge. I don't know. Um, but I do think that you go down a path far enough, it's hard to retreat, to retrace your steps way back to
Yeah.
where the path uh, diverged, right?
Well, I think that it's, in my opinion, and maybe this is just what I prefer for myself, but I think it's better to like focus on one, to put most of your effort into one thing than to be like trying to keep all these avenues open and like putting all these, having all these things open. Like maybe, I mean, I don't know if, I can't even think of an example of how to do that, but like maybe like getting multiple like degrees for different things. I don't know if anyone does that, but I just think it's I think
People do.
it's
Yes, some people do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, but I think it's a good idea to like whatever you're passionate about to put most of your energy into that thing and progressing in that area.
There's a book. I need somebody to check it. Brian, can you find this book for us? It's about how if you don't completely focus on one thing, that you actually end up being better at that thing
Hmm.
because you're bringing other interests to it that other people can't bring. For example, I have this friend who, before he became a full-time artist, was also rehabbing old VWs. So he
Hmm.
had his art studio also doubled as a mechanic's garage.
Interesting.
But his paintings became, he did all these paintings of VW bugs and buses and stuff.
Hmm.
And so, because of that interest and expertise in those cars, that informed his painting and took him to places that, just generic paint, even if he'd been a great landscape painting or something,
Yeah.
it would have looked a lot different for him. So I think that's one maybe counter argument to burning bridges. But I will say also an argument for it: when your back is up against the wall, you will do things that you wouldn't if you have
If you had
uh,
other options.
right. For
Yeah.
example, like we talked about selling in the last episode and how I hate selling as an artist, but because I was determined to do art, you know, when things got really lean for me at one point in my career, I had heard that this woman was interested in some paintings. So I actually called her up and I said, I heard that you might be interested in some
Wow.
paintings and for the right price. And so I was wondering, if we could talk about how to get you something and,
Yeah.
what price you'd be willing to do that at. Fortunately, I haven't had to do that a lot of times in my career, but just needing, like being almost forced to do that at that moment,
Yeah.
pushed me through in ways that a lot of people who had a plan B wouldn't push through.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't take them to that next level in their art career or whatever career it might be.
Yeah. Well, and something about my dad is that Brian's raising his
I found a book called Diversify to Deepen How Exploring New Horizons Makes You Better at What You Love.
That's probably
I don't think that's it, but
right.
that sounds very similar in concept.
Hmm.
Well, then I don't know what it is.
Okay, well, thanks for looking, Brian.
But something about my dad is that he has had like one job that has not been being an artist.
Well, which job are you referring to?
Didn't you work at the Bean Museum?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I had a paper out,
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah,
and
that's true.
then which is, I don't know, was that more of a contractor than an employee? Probably. And then I mowed lawns as a teenager, which was self-employment.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then I worked at a life science museum when I was in college. And I also worked at a gallery briefly as the driver. I drove artwork from the warehouse to the galleries. And then I also got a job working for my brother. And then he disputes this, but he fired me after 2 weeks. So yeah, I haven't had a lot of working experience. Again, I
Yeah.
think this goes back to the obstacle is the way. As I was working for my brother those 2 weeks, I was thinking I'd be making better money if I was painting paintings.
Really.
I'd be so much happier.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times, some of us aren't cut out for working in offices, for
Yeah.
example. And one of the reasons I couldn't do my work for my brother very well is because it was such an early job, early in the morning, and I need to nap throughout the day in order to just be functional. So that's an obstacle, right? But it also was a way for me to gravitate towards something that better suited my personality and my
Yeah.
my circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember when I got my first job, I worked at and I remember just hating it. And my dad said, he said, "Well, what did you learn about doing that?" And I was like, I don't know." And he's like, "Well, maybe you learned that you don't want to work in the food industry."
Oh, wait, can you say that story again? And no, well, let's just bleep out the name of
The name of,
the
okay.
company. But it was
It was a restaurant,
yeah,
a
it's kind of
chain
yeah.
restaurant.
Was it fast food? Would you call it that? No, it's not really
Um,
fast food. More
it's
like
like a little
buffet kind
bit
of style.
nicer. Yeah, it's a little bit nicer than
Anyway,
fast food. We can bleep out.
are you taking notes, Brian?
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you? Yeah. Anyway, cool. Well, let's see what else happens in this chapter. Du-du-du-du-du-du. Oh, that's not. Oh, okay. So he basically gives 6 steps. 6 steps.
And this is about writing down your statement, right?
That is one of the steps. So this is the method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent. The first step is decide exactly how much money you want, or desire, I guess I should use his word. I'm paraphrasing here. The
Yeah.
second step is decide exactly what you're going to give in return for that money. There is no such thing as something for nothing, is what he says.
Yeah.
We should talk about that as well. Okay, the third idea is set a date by when you want to possess the money. Step 4, create a plan, a definite plan for carrying out your plan. Fourth is create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once to put it into action. That was almost a direct quote, but I'm still paraphrasing a little bit. Fifth step, write out a clear, concise statement. I'll just quote this one. Of the amount of money you intend to acquire, name the time limit for its acquisition, state what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it.
And then, yeah, what I had written down about this is that so you write down the statement and then you're supposed to read it aloud twice a day, once when you wake up and then once before you go to bed.
That's step 6.
Oh, that's
Yep.
step 6.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah.
But you also, as you read it, you have to see and feel and believe yourself already in possession.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
of the
because he
money.
says there are like three of the strongest emotions, and there's like love, sex, and faith.
Yes. I don't remember if that's this chapter or another chapter.
It might be that might be a later one, but
we'll definitely get into whether or not sex is an emotion. Okay. Good. But basically feeling is very important. Right?
yeah, like
Desire
associating a feeling with
and
the
feeling.
statement.
Yes. Desire and feeling. In fact, he says you have to work yourself into a white heat of desire for money.
Wow.
What do you think about that?
That so this is something I've heard a lot because I listen to a lot of stuff about like manifesting and manifesting your dream life. And one of the biggest things I hear is that like focus on focus on specific things about your future, but also focus on like how your future feels or like how you want it to feel.
Okay.
And I think that's a great idea. I think that's something that I need to work on a lot more because sometimes I'll just like go through the motions of writing down my affirmations, but then I don't actually like take a moment to feel into the energy. But so remind me again of the quote. So you need to lean into a white burning desire of
Work yourself into. Well, let me read that whole paragraph. You may as well know right here that unless. Oh, sorry. You may as well know right here that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into a white heat of desire for money. Desires, all caps. And actually believe, all caps, you will possess it.
So I would honestly change that a little bit because I think personally that you should and I don't like saying like that you should, but like I think you should focus on having a desire for your passion rather than money. Like having a white burning passion for your dream and your career rather than just focusing on money.
Okay.
So I'm listening to another book that's called The Psychology of Money. That would be an interesting one for us to talk about. But they talk about a lot that. So one of the things they talk about is several examples of people who have acquired huge riches and have lost everything because of their greed. And and they talk about like a great attribute of someone who has a lot of riches is being able to know when you have enough and to know like that it's not worth doing things that are scammy to get more money.
Okay.
Basically, which I think is a really good idea because I think there's a balance between having that desire to make money and like wanting to provide for your family and like have great things in life and also just knowing having like an obsession with money and knowing like and being like satisfied and grateful with what you have already.
Okay. So, yeah, it makes me think of a religious idea. Some people have the religious idea that money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
Another group of people have a religious idea that the love of money is the root of all evil.
Interesting.
Do you have any takes on any of those? I mean,
Yeah.
you've kind of gone into that, I think, a little bit with what you just said.
This is super interesting because I remember as a kid always kind of struggling with this because I feel like I've always had big dreams. And I remember being in church because I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but aren't there several scriptures about like not about having adequate amount but not having like too much? Maybe
Well,
I'm
there's a lot of scriptures that say a lot of things. One of the things that Jesus said is that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God.
wow. Yeah.
In the Book of Mormon, so that's in the New Testament.
Hmm.
In the Book of Mormon, there's a verse that says that if you seek the kingdom of God first, then you'll get the riches that you desire, or at least that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But that you should seek those riches for good and for furthering the kingdom.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting because I remember just hearing scriptures as a kid about not like you shouldn't have too much money and you shouldn't want money. And I remember that was kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around because I kind of wanted to have a lot of money and I kind of felt like I that was just like some conflicting ideas in my mind. And sometimes I feel like that put something in my subconscious mind that like I shouldn't have a lot of money because if I have a lot of money, then I'm gonna like cheat on my spouse or I'm gonna be like become like a terrible person or something or like XYZ, like something bad is gonna happen if I have, or I'm just not gonna be a good person anymore. But I think there's a lot of examples of people who have a lot of money who are good people and who like weren't changed by having money, but
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you what, it takes as an artist who relies on wealthy patrons,
Yeah.
and I see the good that a lot of them do in the world, and I'm impressed by that. And also, like, I personally don't subscribe to, we talked about this a little bit before, but the prosperity gospel, that just because you obey commandments or are righteous doesn't mean you're going to be rich.
Yeah.
Wealth isn't a sign of your righteousness. And Jesus also said that the rain falls on the just and the unjust.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing to keep in mind. It's pretty easy for us in just to see people who are doing well and assume that they're righteous,
Yeah.
or it's also possible to assume that they're evil. It kind of depends on where we come from, our economic viewpoints.
Yeah.
But I guess my take on it is that things are pretty complex.
Yeah, I think it's just super complicated. I honestly don't think that your financial situation has anything to do with your spiritual or religious standings. I mean, maybe it could have to do with, I don't know. But I don't think it definitely has to do with your religious position. I think there's religious people who are rich and religious people who are poor, and bad people who are rich and bad people who are poor, and good people, etc.
Well, here's a phrase from the book that pertains a little bit to what we were talking about. And I want to hear what you think about this statement. And it's in quotes, which is funny because a lot of times Napoleon Hill will put things in quotes, but give us no source,
Yeah.
We have no idea if he's quoting a poem or a famous person, or if he's like putting words into somebody else's mouth like, and putting quotes on it, or like, I really want to say himself. This as if it's not me saying it, But success requires no apologies. Failure permits no alibis.
So, sorry, will you say that one more time?
Success requires no apologies. Failure permits no alibis.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. So they're saying that if you fail, then are they saying that you can't make excuses for your failures?
Yes. Basically, if you succeed, then you have succeeded and you don't need to apologize for it ever. And that if you fail, you can't make an excuse. Yeah. It's all on you.
That's really interesting. Well, that's interesting. I think that's such a hard thing to say, because I think especially in the world we live in, there's so much nepotism where if you're born into a rich family, then they can give you money and you can do with that money what you want. I don't think that is a correct thing to say, because I mean, you can get successful by stepping on other people's backs to get there and scamming your way to the top.
So there might be a lot of people who need to apologize for their success,
for sure.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah, I definitely think that. And I think there's a lot of people who are willing to do whatever it takes to get money, and who, if they need to step on people's backs to get there or use other people to get there, then they'll happily do that. And I think we see a big example of that with celebrities who do crypto scams, or there are people who will literally do anything to get attention and fame. And whether that they do things that are ethical or non-ethical, I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of money who maybe didn't get it by the most ethical means, and maybe should apologize to people. And then as far as the second part with the with you can't make an excuse for your failure. Um, I think it's a little bit more convoluted than that because when I think people can try and fail over and over again, and I think that's a part of achieving success. And I think I think if you try something and fail, that's better than not trying at all.
Okay.
So,
Great. Yeah, I'm just trying to think what I want to say about that.
yeah,
I think it's messed up in many ways.
yeah.
And I'm curious to hear from you, though. You talked about scams and, doing scammy things. Where is where's the line? Like, how do you know something is not ethical?
Um, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is crypto scams.
Why
Um,
why would that not be ethical?
I
I mean,
I
is there an
really
ethical way to do crypto?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it to be commenting on it.
Oh, okay.
I'm just thinking about like the Hawk Tuah girl and like she like and like Jake or didn't Jake Paul do a crypto scam?
Logan
Or
Paul.
Logan Paul did a crypto scam. Um I mean this is like so hard for me to comment on because I think there are like a lot of people who get hate on Reddit for selling like courses and stuff. And sometimes it's hard for me to know like whether something is valid or not. And there's a big discussion, I think, about people being qualified to do things, like if they have the right credentials. And I think that's such a hard thing to like determine whether or not someone is qualified to do something because yeah. I like to think I'm pretty cautious about the things that I purchase. I mean I'm not a big person to purchase courses, but I have purchased courses from this girl. I won't say her name, but um so I don't know, cuz I think we put a lot of stock into who has like a degree or how many degrees you have, and I think that's an interesting conversation that I don't have a full opinion on because I think education is an amazing thing. I also think that less and less people are needing an education to be successful. At least I saw a post that said that, so I don't know. I really have no like evidence to back that up.
So, do you believe in credentials or not? For example, the difference between a therapist and a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is interesting. I actually literally I just wrote a paper on this, or I didn't write a paper, but I but I did like a video of a recording of myself for one of my classes. It was about I can talk about this, right? There's no like liability
For what?
for like this like research I did for my class.
I don't know. Keep going.
Okay, well, we'll see if we need to cut this out as I'm talking about it. But so basically, there is an occupation called clinical exercise physiologist.
Okay.
And as of right now, you don't need to be licensed technically to do it. And so basically, there's arguments. So you don't have to have a degree to do it, but you have to have you have to pass like a general test to do it, but you don't have to have like a degree. And this is kind of a controversial thing because basically what you do as a physical exercise physiologist is you help people. It's like kind of like a personal trainer, but on a very clinical level. So you're working with doctors and these patients have either chronic diseases or what's it called? they either have chronic illnesses or injuries. So it's people who have contraindications for just normal exercise routines. So they really have to do specific things because they're at greater risk. So anyways, these people, there's an argument if they should need to be certified or not and like get a degree for this. And there's an argument not to, because basically what people are saying is that as of right now, there are people who practice who aren't registered, quote unquote, and there hasn't been many cases on the unregistered side that show that it's dangerous or that have like gone wrong, basically. But anyways, I argued that they should be licensed because I just think, especially when you're working in a clinical setting, I think it's so important to know what you're doing and to like be able to give your patients the best quality treatment as possible. Anyways, that's a long way to say, I think anything that's like clinical, I feel like with your physical health or your mental health, I think you should be registered and have like a degree in what you're doing.
Whether or not it's illegal or legal, it ends up coming down to liability, right?
It really does, yeah.
Because if you
get sued for something,
right,
then yeah, obviously, like if you end up ruining someone's life, and I mean, you can be held liable for that.
Yeah, I've just been thinking about coaches versus therapists. And it makes sense to me that people who hire a coach know that they are not getting somebody who is licensed.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's important for people to know that.
Yeah, I think definitely, yeah. So we are pausing the program to advertise for the J. Kirk Richards. So tell us about your stuff.
Oh, thanks, Megan. Well, I've got an art gallery in Provo, Utah. It's a community art gallery. We have new shows every month. Probably have about between 12 and, well, our biggest show we have, dozens and dozens of art, like almost 100 artists participate. So lots of cool shows. Each month it's a new theme. That is called JKR Gallery. You can find them on Instagram at JKR Gallery. I also have an art academy where artists can come and kind of hopefully up their abilities to kind of use it as a stepping stone towards a career. A lot of the artists are interested in moving up into semi-professional or professional status. So you can also find that on Instagram at J. Kirk Richards Studio Academy. At J. Kirk Richards Studio Academy. And that's it, yeah. And then I make art. You can find me at J. Kirk Richards on Instagram. That's where I post a lot of the projects that I'm working on.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirk. And back to the program.
Anyway, maybe that's another topic.
I mean,
we've been going a little while, but let's talk about Napoleon Hill's son.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is so interesting to me. I don't know why, but when I was listening to this, I had not remembered hearing this story before, and I thought it was kind of crazy.
Okay, so just tell us really quickly what happened.
So basically, Napoleon Hill had a son who was born with no ears, and the doctors told him that he was most likely not going to be able to hear or speak for the entirety of his life. And Napoleon...
You know what was funny? The doctor said that was a possibility.
That was a possibility. Okay. Yeah. And Napoleon Hill said, I will not accept a son who is deaf. I don't think that's
the actual book quote says, every day I renewed the pledge I had made to myself not to accept a deaf mute for a son.
Yeah, and I thought that was such a weird thing to say. Like, I'm sorry, but...
Yeah, I don't mean to laugh. It's just like a little tragic, right?
It really is. I mean, imagine like I'm sorry, but like as his son, like reading that line, I would just be like, anyways,
Now, what was his motivation for taking that
so his
approach?
motivation was that he thought basically that if he wasn't going to he basically thought that if he could just like manifest and drill that idea into himself and into his son, like you're not deaf and mute and that you can like function like any other person, that he will be able to hear and speak. And he goes on to say that, yeah, so he didn't want his son to be deaf and mute. He would basically instill these, oh yeah, and okay, I thought this was so weird, but he would not let his son learn sign language.
Yes. He would not let his son go to a school for the deaf or
Or learn
learn
sign
sign
language.
language.
Yeah, which I thought was super weird, but he
Sounds like you agreed with the school officials. It says it cost us many heated debates with school
yeah,
officials.
yeah. Like, I'm sorry, but I just don't see what the harm is in letting your son learn sign language. But that's just me. Anyways, so he would go on to like he basically learned that he could talk to his son if like his mouth was like on his temple. I
Hmm.
believe so, like if he was talking with his mouth on his son's temple, he could like hear the vibrations
Yeah.
and he could hear that way. And basically they were able to develop a method where he could hear pretty well. And one of the main things that I remember is that he would tell his son that he actually had an advantage because he was deaf. Because like his teachers would be like kinder to him and people like if he was selling something versus his brother who did not have um any disability, if he was selling something people would feel bad for him so they would buy stuff from him.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's kind of funny. I thought it was funny how he always like compares him to his brother, and he's always like, "You actually have the advantage over your brother because."
Yes. In fact, I underlined this spot. He says, when his older brother wanted something, he would lie down on the floor, kick his feet in the air, cry for it, and get it. He's like, our other sons, he was just like, threw tantrums and got what he wanted, but not our deaf son. He worked hard and
He
people,
would, yeah,
like he earned it. And
yeah,
which I thought was a little bit ironic
yeah,
because he's kind of indicating like, I did this for my son. I instilled this burning desire for him to be normal,
yeah.
but somehow wasn't able to instill a burning desire on the other
In
kid
the other
to
son,
work or
yeah.
something. I don't know. Just
Seriously,
like how much control do any of us have on our
on our
kids
kids, yeah.
ultimately?
This whole story kind of rubbed me the wrong way because, I mean, yeah, first of all, like the implication that he like controlled how his son like turned out in the end, and just the fact that like he wasn't going to accept his son if he didn't end up being able to hear or speak for the rest of his life. That just is super sad to me.
Yeah, so to continue the story, they ultimately tried one like hearing aid device, didn't
Yeah.
really work very well. They tried another one, and the son was like, I don't really want it. I don't know. The last one didn't work. I'm not excited about the new one. But as soon as he put it in, he could hear great.
Yeah.
Right. And so then Napoleon Hills says, it's not enough for him to just be able to hear. We need to turn this disadvantage into an equivalent advantage.
Yeah.
So the son went to that hearing aid company and applied for a sales job. Now, here's the thing that I think is ironic. It talks about how he was able to go then and sell these hearing aids and relate to families that with people, deaf kids or whatever.
Yeah.
How much better would he have been able to relate to them had he gone to a deaf school
Seriously.
and
And learned
learned
sign
sign
language.
language?
Seriously.
But
That's so
no,
weird. And like
no,
I'm
Napoleon Hill
sorry,
wouldn't
but I
allow
think
that.
I think it's like really freaking cool if you know sign language. Like people who learn sign language, I'm like that's a really cool thing to know because you can communicate with deaf people and, so I think that would be like a great advancement on your knowledge, if anything, but
Yeah. Yeah, well, we don't need to belabor this chapter, but I think the takeaway is desire.
yeah,
Desire. The reason he didn't want his son to learn sign language is because he wanted to create in his son a burning desire to be normal,
yeah,
right? Essentially. But I think the good message that we can take away is that when something becomes a burning desire for us, it's more likely to
to happen.
happen, that we can work towards it and it will materialize.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to get on there before we close this chapter. Well, one thing is what the idea of white lies. He says the little white lies I planted in my son's mind when he was a child, by leading him to believe his affliction would become a great asset, which he could capitalize, had justified itself. What do you think about that?
I think that is like, I think that's such a silly thing to say.
It's a weird way to frame it.
It
don't
is,
you
yeah, it's a
think?
weird way to say it.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite part of that chapter is the part where the 6 steps where you write down your goal and how long it will take and what you'll do. It's like the SMART goals where you write a goal that's like oh my gosh, that's specific, measurable, blah blah blah.
Here's my question about that. I like it as well, but also like the fixed date.
Yeah.
Do you think that having a fixed date might create, like, I don't mind having a goal with a date associated with it. I think that's good to have that
Yeah.
specific. But to also say I will have $1 million by February next year, do you think like by December you might start feeling
Getting
pressure to do something scammy?
Yeah, that's
That's
very
my
true.
concern.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you because I'm not gonna lie, I've set goals and been like, I'm gonna like do this by this year, and it like hasn't happened, but it's still stuff that I want to happen, like buying a house or like buying like a rental property or like just stuff like that. And I think just being able to like adapt and be like, well, maybe I didn't do this, but like I also was like working my butt off doing a degree all year, and that's working me towards my goals. And also like I did all of these great things this year, and like even if I didn't achieve this, like I've built all these building blocks to get there eventually. And I think just being able to like reframe it that way, and maybe even like do like a time frame, like within the next 10 years, I want to maybe do this, and just like keeping it flexible and being able to adapt and not get too down on yourself or frustrated if it doesn't happen by that certain time.
Yeah. This might not be the most eloquent comparison, but sometimes I think of it as a gestation period. We know that the normal gestation period for humans is 9 months, but we don't actually know what the
Yeah.
gestation period is for a specific business or project.
Yeah.
And so being patient with yourself.
I mean, yeah, that's a good analogy because it's like developing.
Right. I mean, it takes however long it's going to take.
Yeah.
And you might be able to speed it up. Or slow it down, but in the end, you may not have control over timetables.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also like just kind of being open to I like to call it the universe. That's like my like higher power name.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to just kind of relax sometimes and be like, I don't need to have everything figured out right now. And like, I think that there are like higher powers that are going to like help me. And obviously, like, I'm not just gonna sit back and do nothing and like hope that money comes to me, but like, if I'm doing what I can and like I'm working hard and I'm doing things that I'm proud of, like, I think that like things are gonna be good for me. Like, and I don't think I need to like have to control every single detail about what that is and like how it happens.
Okay.
And just like letting go of that need to like have to control everything in my life.
Well, good. Thanks, Megan. That was chapter 2, Desire. And join us next time
For
for
chapter 3,
chapter 3, Faith.
faith. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.